Well, here I am today recording the first episode in the Sustainability podcast series in University of Galway. And with me today is Michelle O'Dowd, who is the Sustainability Officer at the University of Galway. And first of all, Michelle, maybe you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in sustainability.
Great. So thank you very much, Nuala. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to talking about sustainability as it relates to the University of Galway. So as I said, Michelle O'Dowd Lohan is my name. I work as the Sustainability Officer and I have the great honour of being University of Galway's inaugural Sustainability Officer. So I took up the role in 2019 and working in conjunction with the Deputy President and Registrar and the Community and University Sustainability Partnership Team. Together, we're driving forward the sustainability vision in the university. So it's an absolutely dream role for me. I grew up in Onspidale, spent a lot of time in nature. I've had a big interest in the environment since I was very young. And to be here in the university, the inaugural sustainability officer, and having a chance really to shape our direction into the future is just as a graduate of University of Galway, it's an honour, the role, and I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. Well, I'm not sure if a lot of people know this. This is going to be quite a new announcement by the time our podcast comes out, but we will be an SDG Champion. And first of all, for those of us who don't know what SDGs are and what they mean, perhaps you could just give us kind of a little brief synopsis of what an SDG is.
Yeah, great, Nuala. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant news and we're delighted when the news filtered through a few weeks ago. But just to say in terms of the SDGs, so the background really is that back in September 2015, 193 world leaders, the United Nations General Assembly, agreed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. But the very heart or core of that agenda are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So 17 goals that became dubbed as the 2030 Agenda for Transforming the World. What is unique, what is different about this globally agreed framework versus other frameworks? And I suppose on that note, the first thing I'd say is for the world to agree on anything, that's a really big deal. But to agree on these 17 goals, and not just the goals, there's a big package with them. There's 169 targets and over 200 indicators. But these goals set out a roadmap for us towards things like social inclusion, economic prosperity, environmental sustainability. So a very ambitious framework. And I suppose a framework that globally, to get over the line, is really amazing. And these goals have a time-bound association with them. So they run from 2015 to 2030. So in the next 15 years, we've agreed that this is the direction for the planet.
So these 17 SDGs, they apply not just to countries, but to organisations like University of Galway.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, there's a few characteristics about the goals that really separate them from other frameworks. And one of the first ones, as you've pointed out there, it's a universal framework. So these goals apply to all cities, all nations, public sector, private sector, students, staff, colleges. All of us, we're all challenged to act. Every single person on the planet has a role to play in terms of these goals. And I suppose previous global agreements, it might have been more kind of shaped around maybe developed countries helping developing countries or governments helping society. But with these goals, we're all challenged to act.
Okay, so we all have a responsibility for the SDGs, for the 17 SDGs.
Yeah, everyone has a role and can play a role in actually achieving them. And I suppose another kind of really good thing about the goals is that they're interconnected. So let's say we do work on one goal and we try hard and we try and progress that goal. The big outcome is that also helps progress other goals. So for example, if we do work to, reduce, let's say the whole goal around no poverty, that can help zero hunger, which in turn could lead to good health and well-being. So they're interrelated and interconnected. Or if we do work around, establishing clean energy systems, that's going to help climate action, and life on land and life below water and promote good health and well-being. So they're all interrelated and interconnected, and that makes them really special.
Okay. So this is, I suppose, as it relates to University of Galway and why we're sitting here today, maybe you could tell me a little bit about University of Galway's SDGs and how our progress has been to date.
Yeah, great. So I'd say, Nuala, the first thing I'd say is that our SDG journey started in earnest back in 2020 with the launch of our new strategic plan for the university, Shared Vision Shaped by Values. Now, normally when you develop a strategy, you have your vision and you build your strategy around that. But what we did is we decided what our values were, and we built our strategy around those values. And at the time, a number of values were mooted, but sustainability was one of those core values that was mooted. And it ended up, because of very strong student voice, being accepted as one of the core values for our institution. So really what that means is that we have a strategy now that's built on sustainability as a core value. And that value of sustainability is very much focused on the Sustainable Development Goals. So our strategic plan for this university aims, for example, for SDG Champion status, which we've just achieved over the last couple of weeks. So the SDGs are part and parcel of our strategic vision for the future. And I suppose the same day we launched that strategic plan for the university, our university president also signed the SDG Accord. And what that means is we have committed publicly to align all our major efforts to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, targets and indicators, including through our education and research, our operations, our planning and our engagement activities. So a really big framework there in terms of the SDGs. And we actually have taken that SDG Accord commitment and developed it into a specific university policy, our climate action and sustainability policy. And that again reiterates our commitment to embedding the SDGs into everything that we do.
Wow, that's amazing. And to manage to bring all of these kind of sustainable development goals together throughout a large organisation like University of Galway, it needs a lot of coordination and effort. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so I suppose the first thing I would say in terms of our SDG journey is that we would very much see it as not a journey, but more a responsibility, that it is our responsibility to embed these goals. Now, the sustainability approach that we use in this university is based on the idea of a learn, live, lead model. And really what that means is that we want to embed learning about the SDGs into all aspects of our teaching and learning. So everyone that comes to campus at the University of Galway, they learn about sustainability. And we also want to embed the SDGs into our research. We want to carry out research here that has real positive, meaningful impact. Research that helps solve some of those great sustainability challenges that the SDGs identify. You know, things like energy security, food security, protecting endangered species. But as well as learning about it, we also want to set the campus up that we're living more sustainably in everything that we do. You know, the food that we eat, the energy we use, how we manage our waste, how we promote health and well-being. And I suppose the idea is because we're learning about it and we're living it, that should position us then to be the role models and be the leaders to translate that SDG agenda beyond the campus walls and into our local communities where it becomes relevant to society and where everyone has a role to play. Like all of our students are part of the University of Galway community here, but they go back out into their communities. And if we can send out students that are well-rounded, knowledgeable and have that expertise in terms of the SDGs, well then we'll have done a very good job as an institution.
Okay, so about the SDG champions, how does that process happen? How do we become an SDG champion? How did it happen? Maybe you could take me step by step through the process.
Yeah, so I think, as I kind of pointed out at the beginning, that way back in September 2015, Enda Kenny at the time, as part of the United Nations General Assembly, put Ireland forward as a country that was going to be a signatory to the SDGs. So that government responsibility was there. But it's very important that it doesn't maintain its position as a government responsibility, that position is translated to society. And my understanding in terms of the origins of the SDG Champions programme is to take it from the government context and put it into more of a societal context. So back in 2019, the programme was initiated originally, and at the time, 5 champions from around the country were identified. I mightn't be fully correct in these, but there was County Council, Carlow County Council, the GAA, the Union of Students in Ireland, and they were identified as sustainability champions that would be role models and leaders for the rest of the country. Now, unfortunately, after 2019, probably due to COVID and all those interruptions that we had, the Champions programme stagnated. And the next thing we heard about it was in 2022, when a call out went out again, just in December 23, looking for SDG champions for the period 23-24. Now, we were absolutely delighted when we found out about this. If you look at our document, Shared Vision Shaped by Values, that strategic plan I spoke about, that plan, one of our key flagship targets in that plan is to aim and secure SDG champion status. So we really saw this then as our opportunity to be an SDG champion. And I suppose, we're delighted about it because it's an opportunity for us to be advocates and role models for the SDGs. It's a great opportunity for us to reach out to our own campus community of over 20,000 students and staff and, generate awareness about the SDGs and the role that everyone has to play in them. And of course, it's an absolutely wonderful opportunity to showcase all the great work that's taken place across the university in terms of cresting the SDGs and this huge work taking place within our own campus community, but it's really an opportunity to share that. And really, I suppose, more than anything, it is an opportunity to translate by example. So we can be the leaders and we can translate by example what institutions can actually do to achieve the SDGs.
That's amazing, because I think that the fantastic thing about it, of course, is that if we can kind of spread that word and that knowledge out there amongst the community. You mentioned there that there's been a huge amount of work done on campus in terms of sustainability. Perhaps you could just give us a few examples of what you think are some of the most important ones.
Yeah, so I suppose, that's kind of like how are we getting on as an institution in terms of progressing the SDGs. And I suppose there's more and more information out there that tells us that prospective students are really looking at a university's commitment to sustainability when they're making their choices. And we see this with the emergence of new rankings. And one of those rankings that has emerged in recent times is the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings. And these rankings measure a university's impact on society. What are we doing for the benefit of society? And it uses the SDG framework to determine that impact. And the SDGs, it's an ideal framework to show impact as a society. So I suppose in terms of those rankings, University of Galway would participate in those rankings. And it's really a chance for us to kind of gather, accumulate all the work that's taken place across the university and see how we're getting on. Now, those rankings measure universities' progress across 4 key areas in terms of the teaching, the research, the outreach and the stewardship. So I'm delighted to say that University of Galway in the most recent ranking edition, the 2022 edition, is ranked 47th in the world overall and ranked 5th in the world for SDG 12, Sustainable Consumption and Production. So we're very, happy with our progress to date, but there's amazing work taking place right across the university. And I suppose our opportunity to showcase that work is through our annual sustainability report. And this report includes an individual report on each of the 17 SDGs. And just like the ranking approach, we evaluate how we're getting on in terms of that teaching and learning, in terms of that research, in terms of that outreach. So right across the university, this work taking place. So if we look, for example, from a living perspective on the campus here, so much work taking place, in terms of, how energy efficient we are, efforts to reduce energy use, efforts to make a move to more renewable energy types. If you look at water efficiency measures, measures we're taking to reuse water, our work around, implementing best practice in terms of biodiversity, allowing pollinators to thrive on the site, developing the campus as, a test bed for biodiversity and for learning about biodiversity. I suppose all the initiatives taking place in the areas of, for example, active travel, more kind of sheltered bike stands, more lockers, more showers. So right across that whole living, how we live on campus. And that's extended looking at the waste, efforts to reduce that waste, to make that move towards circular economy through resource recovery. So on the living end, huge work taking place. And then if we look at our teaching and learning, So I suppose academic staff right across the university are, centrally involved in implementing all those skills that are needed to translate the SDGs to our students. So that's looking at curriculum, looking at modules, where there are opportunities to embed the SDGs in terms of the content. It's looking at developing co-curricular opportunities for our students. And then I suppose that leadership piece. And again, that's that piece where we reach out to our community groups and that we try and share knowledge, share best practice. And we also learn a lot from our community groups. And I suppose overall, like, universities have the opportunity to be great conveners. They can bring together the private sector, the public sector, businesses, NGOs, civil society, and we can work together, to tackle all those challenges that are set out in terms of the SDGs.
And in terms of, I suppose, with any initiative, any of these new initiatives which you mentioned, there is a certain kind of mindset change required from is it probably a little bit more difficult to do that in staff than students, or would you say it was equal? And do you think, are we embracing it as a community, the SDGs, or has there been resistance?
Yeah, so I suppose a few things on that. If we are to successfully implement the SDGs across our institution, absolutely we need leadership for sustainability at the highest level in the university. But not just, leadership at the highest level. We also need a bottom-up approach, student voice, action, activism. We need system-wide leadership. We need engagement. I suppose the message that's coming all over the world in terms of evaluating, well, how are universities getting on in this space? There are two big gaps. Number one, resourcing, and number two, a lack of awareness, education awareness in terms of what the SDGs are. What is it that I need to do to embed learning for the SDGs into my coursework, into my research, so that learning piece. And we're actually hoping that the SDG Champions programme, for example, is a great opportunity for us to generate awareness in our own campus community in terms of the SDGs and what is it, what is our responsibilities and what is it that we can do in our area. Because I said that every single person that comes through the doors, they all have a role to play in the journey. And it's just identifying that role and what you can do to contribute to the story.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I know there are some wonderful initiatives. I know particularly there's been a recent student competition that was won by students internationally. That was part of the Enlight kind of program, I think. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I suppose I'll start and say our students are absolutely amazing. We are absolutely blessed with the students and the interest that our students have in sustainability. And as I say, there's 20,000 of us here, but nearly 18,000 of those are students. Unless students are centrally involved and centrally part of the journey, really active as an institution, we're not really going anywhere in sustainability. So the initiative you're talking about there, Nuala, I think is the Glossary Initiative, a really wonderful resource recovery initiative. So at the end of each semester and at the end of the year, students come to Galway, they have all their stuff, they have their pots, their pans, their jars, their shampoos, their Tupperware, all that kind of stuff, their duvets, their pillows. Then they go to the airport to get on their Ryanair flight to go home. They can't bring all this stuff with us. And in the past, and a few years ago, all of that had gone out as waste. But the Glossary Initiative has changed all that. And what we do now is we set up collection points right across the university, and students have the opportunity to deposit the items that they no longer need or that they're not going to bring with them. And then we have an opportunity to reshare those items either with our own campus community, with incoming students the following year, or also we have the opportunity to donate them to charity. And for example, last summer it was a great opportunity for us to share a lot of resources with the Ukrainian families that moved to Galway about that time. So it's very positive at that time of the year. And at the moment there's a lot of work taking place, trying to gather the stuff again, and just like to acknowledge the work of Milena Thren and Dr. Lorraine Tansey in terms of progressing that work. And then we did also a very nice initiative where we advertised our Student Sustainability Leadership Awards programme. So now that we're SDG Champion, we want to role model students to work with us on this journey.
And what does that involve?
Well, what this particular programme involves is that we've identified 2 students now that will intern with the sustainability project team in the university over the summer months. So they have an opportunity to work with the team to help develop the communication, the toolkits, the events that relate to students. So we really want to have our SDG Champion programme very student-centred. So we're hoping to host, for example, a big event in September as part of National SDG Week. But we want students part and parcel all of that. And ideally, a big student-centred event where, students will be attracted to other students and, hopefully they will engage in it and learn about the SDGs as part of it. And then also, I suppose, we want to have communication to our students that's relevant to students, that students are interested in, that they want to hear about. And it mightn't be the stuff I'd put together, but if a student puts it out there, students are interested in other students. And really what we're trying to do with this internship is identify SDG role model students that will kind of reach out, to the student cohort in the university, and so that we can all move together on this journey, really.
That's amazing, because it's so important, because obviously they are the ones who are going to keep this alive, going forward. And in terms of research then, I know, the research that goes on in University of Galway is widespread, and it's very, very difficult kind of to say which is more important or not. But in terms of sustainability, there are particular goals probably for research. Would you be able to tell us about any of the more interesting ones? I'm not asking you to pick, ones that are better.
Yeah, you could get me into a lot of trouble here now if I start pinpointing, But
there's some very, very interesting research going on.
Oh, absolutely very interesting. And I suppose, like, more broadly speaking, I think it might be safer, but more broadly speaking, we certainly have a global reputation in this area for areas like, med tech, marine environmental research, renewable energy technologies, data analytics, culture, creativity. And when you think about the breadth of the 17 SDGs, we're not just talking about environmental sustainability, we're talking about all the other areas as well. So the breadth of research that's taken place, we have 5 research centres, and the breadth of research that's taking place in all, it's all really important research in terms of progressing the SDGs. Just a few things to mention. I suppose I mentioned these areas because I feature them in our annual sustainability report. But, the Ryan Institute, for example, we have 500 researchers based in the Ryan Institute, and they're carrying out research that's addressing nearly all of the 17 SDGs. Up on 350 research projects there that are helping progress the SDGs. I said earlier that we ranked 5th in the world for SDG 12, Sustainable Consumption and Production. And I suppose as part of that, we have different research clusters in the university that is helping us reach that kind of area. So, for example, we have the Environment, Sustainability and Development cluster, and that is a lovely one around campaigners in terms of social interactions and energy efficiency behaviours. We also have the Applied Systems Thinking research cluster, and that's responsible for the Peatlands and People project. And a big part of that is the Visitor Attraction Centre. And the purpose of that Visitor Attraction Centre is to generate awareness in terms of, the climate action that is needed. The peatlands are key in that climate action, but behavioural change is also key too. So it's reaching out to groups in terms of translating that story.
That's amazing. And I know you mentioned there a couple of times the SDG 12, the consumption and production. What does that, if you could break that down, could you just explain that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so let's say that SDG 12, and as I said at the onset, I suppose how we look at this particular one is, the teaching that's taken place in the university, the research that's taken place, the stewardship, the community engagement. So if you look at the teaching that's taken place, we now have new masters, for example, in consumer psychology, and sustainable consumption and production is a big part of that masters. I said as well that students don't just learn about sustainability through the formal curriculum itself, it's also through co-curricular activities. And if you look at the work that our students are doing on this particular one in terms of sustainable consumption and production, we know, for example, that the Student Union, they won Student Union Achievement Year Award, it's SAII award for their Sustainable Mondays campaign. But what was that? And it was like, circulating 3,000 keep cups to students, 7,000 tote bags, opportunities there to introduce more vegan, vegetarian options to our menus, reducing waste. And every Monday, an initiative that kind of engaged students on sustainability. So it could be a beach clean or biodiversity trail cleanup, or, just some type of initiative that would engage students on sustainability. We also, for example, have the Energy Society, and and they ran great events around, anti-fast fashion, just to generate awareness of, the kind of negative environmental, social, economic impacts of fast fashion. They also had an Energy Awareness Week, just to generate interest among the student cohort in terms of, energy saving practices and good behaviours in terms of energy efficiency and that end of things. The climate crew hosted a Waste It Week, just to generate awareness about, how do we minimise waste, how do we reduce food waste, how do we improve the segregation of waste. I suppose we also now have the food pantry, an absolutely wonderful initiative by one of our students. So it avoids that wasted piece in terms of food. Food that would normally have gone out as waste is now, offered as part of a pantry, and it certainly addresses areas like food insecurity, but also the waste end of things is absolutely wonderful. That is a resource, and a viable resource that would have gone out as waste, and it is now reused.
And it's not something we automatically think about, it's actually nice to think about that, and to actually consider, what is going on when you buy things or when you throw things away. It's a nice reminder. Even on campus now, we have our cups that which started last year, so that, we're not kind of buying disposable cups to throw away. So already, I think, even on campus with staff and students, there is already a change happening there.
Yeah, and I suppose that is what that goal is all about, really. Just being mindful of what we're consuming and what needs to be produced that we can consume that, and what efforts can we make as an institution to kind of change and move away from that very linear model where we're dumping everything and using everything, to more reuse and resource efficiency and that end of things. And I suppose when you talk about the keep cups and, getting rid of single-use plastics, when I talk about sustainable consumption and production, I really can't bypass a mention of the Galway Green Labs project. And I suppose that's moving away, of course, from the catering and single-use plastics, very much focused on those single-use lab plastics. And we've the great honour of being, the first Green Lab certified lab in Europe back in 2019. We're now up on nearly 28 labs, Green Lab certified, and hoping to double that by the end of this year, by the end of 2023. And a very holistic approach to resource efficiency in labs, looking at the energy that's used, the water that's used, the temperature that refrigerators are at, the single-use plastic items that we use every day in our lab practices. What is the opportunity there to switch those out and use reusables, which we'd have done 20 years ago. But unfortunately, just over the last 2 decades especially, that we very much moved to this single-use disposable, which has its, absolute impacts in terms of carbon emissions and that end.
That's amazing. Well, Michelle, I think we've covered so much today, and yet I feel like we haven't covered half of what's going on, to be honest. But in the next few weeks, I'm hoping to have more guests in who will be able to give me their own little thoughts and ideas about what's going on in different areas. But for today, thank you so much for coming in, Michelle O'Dowd Lohan, and telling us all about the SDG journey. And I hope we continue along this road, and that we continue to be SDG champions in the future.
Great. And could I just make a last request that, to get involved in this, it's 1 year, 23, 24, we want to be the leader, we want to be the best champion, and, we need you. We need you as part of this journey. So if you could, be informed, learn about the SDGs, and just see the real meaningful impact that you can have by engaging with the programme. Thanks, Nuala.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Michelle.